how does the ECD help teams work, organizations or teams work out their new culture? So the key here is that people support what they create. I'm not sure who said that quote, but I love it. And I wish I could attribute it to somebody, but I read it a while ago now, and people support what they create. And quite often when it comes to culture building, and I think I talk about this in the masterclass a little bit, but quite often it's always a top-down exercise where the senior execs will squirrel away and come out of their rooms and interview a few people and do some focus groups and go away and then say, these are our values. And that's so disconnected from the organization because not many people have been involved in supporting it. And what I've come to realize is that also really neglects and suppresses the subcultures that exist within organizations. And for a long time, the rhetoric and the consensus has been, let's not allow subcultures to exist, let's suppress them, and let's create homogeneity across an organization. And I think the power of this game is that when we celebrate subcultures and say, hey, the marketing team is different from the engineering team, which is different from the production team, which is different from the finance team, and let's work with you to define how you want your environment to feel and not feel so you can be successful, then that's sort of like the foundation for the culture of an organization from my perspective, because those teams are creating what they need, the environment they need to be successful. And that's the smallest unit of trust, or the smallest way to build the culture of an organization, I think, at that level through teams. And then connecting that to a high level, or high overarching, maybe purpose, vision, mission, whatever the mechanisms the companies are using. So working out you said their new culture, I always recommend starting with that. So working in functional teams and going, let's find out from those teams what they want their culture to be, and then scaffolding up this way and going, what are the commonalities across it? And then working with the leadership team to go, okay, we found out these things from all of our teams. Now, are there common threads across that? What do we need as a leadership group? What do we want our people to be feeling? And then working those things and moving them together. But still making sure that whichever team has gone through that process, that stays alive for them. Because they're going to be far more likely to buy into that and engage with that because they've created that. And some of the really common feedback from teams that I've run this with in the past, I've even had people come up to me at the end of sessions and go, people who often are quite cynical before they come into it go, hey, that was really cool because I got invited to our values a day the other day, and I was asked to input into that, and then I went along to that and I went away, and then I've never really heard anything about it, or they've just gone up on the wall. Whereas this was about me and my team and us working together, which is what I do on a day basis. And they've found that to be a really powerful way, a really powerful experience. And so I'm on a little bit of a crusade, to be honest, to go, let's celebrate these subcultures and create the most engaged teams and define what that environment should feel and not feel at that level, because that then scaffolds up and that becomes contagious, because that contagion will exist. Yeah. So that's how the game can start to help define and work out their new culture, or work out the culture, or even just define the culture of their organization if you haven't gone through that stage. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to quickly show you around that is something I'm just going to share my screen with you in a second here, is an exercise that I created a while ago to help individuals connect their emotional drivers to company values. Because the question often comes, well, how do these things connect together? And we ran this, bear with me while I've got it here. We ran this with a bank here in New Zealand. This was a couple of years ago when I first started running this exercise. And bear with me while I share my screen. And I created this values and emotions connection canvas. I'll talk you through this and I'll show you an example of it. And this isn't available, but I'll share this with you all to say thanks for coming along to the Q&A so you can have a play with it. But essentially what we get people to do is write down on the left-hand side what their individual list of desired emotions, feelings are. So my success relies on me feeling these things. And on the right-hand side, what they don't want to feel, but they might. And in the middle of the canvas, write down the company or team values, principles, whatever the word is that your team or organization uses to describe that. And you'll see the company now, it was Kiwi Bank. And I did it as an example to show them. I can't show you any of their ones, but this is my vision, because I did it to show them how this works. But at the time, the top 5 things I wanted to feel in my work were free, inspired, curious, brave, rebellious. And their values, I'm not sure if they still are, but they might be, a great, gutsy, and side by side. And so if I'm feeling inspired, I'm far more likely to be living up to our value of great. So there's a real connection between those things there. And if I'm feeling curious, I'm going to be more likely to live up to our value of great. And if I'm feeling brave, I'm going to be more likely to be living up to that. Rebellious is going to help me be a little bit gutsy, probably. Brave is going to definitely help me live up to our value of gutsy. On the flip side, though, if I'm feeling anxious, it's going to be difficult for me to live up to our value of great. And certainly with the gutsy part. And if I'm feeling disconnected, I'm definitely not going to be living up to our value of side by side. Incapable, if I'm feeling incapable, which I do from time to time, it's going to be difficult for me to live up to our value of gutsy. So we went through this process as a team to get people to have a look at the connection and start to understand what those interconnectivities are between this. Because I often think one of the conversations leaders will have is, well, these are our values and nobody's living them, or our behaviors and nobody's living them. And this gives you a bit of an insight about why that might be the case. Because if I'm feeling super anxious, then it's going to be difficult for me to behave in this way or live up to these values. And so it just changes the conversation around our values and connects the emotional drivers to them in a way that makes it a little bit more tangible. So I'm going to send you, or Sophie will send this to you after the session so you can have a play around with it yourself. And I'd suggest, in the same way that I did this, suggest for your own teams or your own company, write down your values and give it a go yourself and just look at the connections as well. I carry this around in my bag sometimes as an example of, if somebody asks me a question about this game and how it connects, I'll have that and I'll show them my vision of it or an example of it just to make it real as well for people. But yeah, you can experiment and play around with that. Any questions on that values connection canvas?
If there was something that really clashed with it, like I see in that one, you had rebellious and you had like minus because it didn't work with side by side. What would your recommendation to them be?
Good question. No, sorry. So rebellious might stop me from being side by side. Yeah, I think the biggest key for these things is it's an awareness and understanding generator. So it's going to prompt the conversation to then go, okay, so what would that mean? The simple, if you're facilitating it or you're the coach or the consultant, I design these tools hopefully to generate and prompt more questions and more understanding. So it might be a question, okay, why would that be the case? What would that look like? What would that mean? Those are the types of conversations or questions you then ask as a follow-up. Just because rebellious doesn't necessarily align with side by side doesn't mean that I shouldn't be feeling rebellious though, because that's an internal emotional driver of mine. And we need to celebrate that. We just need to understand how that might come into conflict or might enhance it. And the awareness and understanding of that is the key thing, because we don't have a way to create that awareness or understanding usually. There's just those people aren't behaving in that way. Why is that? Or let's try to fix their behavior rather than going further beneath the surface. Yeah.